British armed forces have intercepted a Shadow Fleet oil tanker attempting to pass through the English Channel. In a post on X, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, said, "In the early hours of this morning, I directed our armed forces to intercept a Shadow Fleet oil tanker attempting to pass through the English Channel. This successful operation delivers yet another blow to Russia and reminds those fueling Putin's war in Ukraine that we will not let them hide." Well, with me now is our correspondent, Vincent McAviney. Vincent, first of all, just explain what this Shadow Fleet is.
Well, the Shadow Fleet are hundreds of Russian tankers that are used under different flags. So, for instance, in this case, the Smyrtos ship that has been impounded effectively by Britain is under a Cameroonian flag. So they sail under other flags and they're responsible for carrying about 75% of Russia's sanctioned oil. Now, this goes out around the world. It puts money in the coffers of the Kremlin to fund the missiles and drones that they're constantly firing at Ukraine. And the UK is a leader in tackling this fleet, having already sanctioned over 500 vessels. We share this intelligence with allies, the likes of France, which has also carried out these kind of operations. And it's seen the oil and gas revenues fall about 25% year on year in 2025.
Yeah, the UK government has said that, or described it as a huge blow to Putin's war. How much does Russia rely on this Shadow Fleet?
It relies hugely on this Shadow Fleet. It is the sort of primary export petrochemicals for Russia, and particularly at the moment when we know that Russia is really struggling in the war in Ukraine. The advances the Ukrainians have made, particularly in drone technology, have seen them really struggle on the battlefield. They have now lost territory in recent weeks. So they're very much dependent on this to fund them, because they've also got a manpower issue. Some estimates up to 500,000 Russians have been killed over these 4 years of war. They're struggling to get people in. There's talk about more conscription perhaps coming back. And so Russia really needs the money from this oil to pay the soldiers and get those munitions.
And as you mentioned, this isn't the first time that a Russian vessel has been intercepted, not just by the UK, but also France. So how much have European efforts dented Russia's fleet?
Well, there hasn't been that much of this yet. This is the first time Britain has done this. The Prime Minister signalled in March that he was going to be willing to do this. And it's a really important signal, though, because the Channel, and we know the Smyrtos was travelling south from the North Sea down into the Channel, the world's busiest shipping lane. This is a warning to Putin that if you continue to use this shipping lane, we will take action. And we'll see over the coming days whether or not other vessels now divert their course. But this is a sign from Putin that the UK is willing to do this. It involved Royal Marines and the National Crime Agency. Previously, the UK had helped assist France with an operation like this in the Atlantic. This time, it's us taking the lead with support from France. So Europe has been wanting to get tough on this for some time. It seems Keir Starmer has finally decided that this is the moment for him to do so.
Vincent, thank you. Our correspondent, Vincent McAviney there. Well, let's speak now to Mikey Kay, who's a military analyst and co-host of the Security Brief. Thanks for joining us, Mikey. How challenging is an operation like this?
Significantly challenging. It's happening in what I would say is actually quite close airspace. It's happening at night, so you've got a number of aviation assets that are working quite low to the ocean. You've got the Merlin Mark IV Commando helicopters. They'll be dropping on 4-2 Commando, who are part of this special operations task group that are basically tasked with taking over NATO special operations under the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps as of July. So they will have done a lot of training in maritime security, but it's still every operation that you go on. It's at night, you're on night vision goggles. There are a number of aviation or helicopter assets operating in the area. So you've got Royal Air Force Chinooks, you've got the Merlin Mark IVs, all carrying, there we go, that's the RAF Chinook there that can carry a significant amount of capability on it in terms of commandos. The Merlin Mark IV helicopter, that's what we can see there. They will be part of this operation. Then you've got Wildcats as well. So there's three helicopter assets up in this sort of a very close proximity of space. They're on night vision goggles. And then on top of that, you've got what's called a P8 Poseidon, which is a maritime patrol aircraft. That comes all the way from RAF Lossiemouth in the north of Scotland. And that will be basically tracking the Shadow tanker that you can see up there on the right of the screen, the Smyrtos. It'll be tracking that. It'll also be looking at any other potential Russian naval assets that might be in the vicinity, in terms of if the Russian Navy decided they wanted to escort the shadow tanker or protect it in some way. And then the P8 might be performing some form of command and control C2 or airborne talk-through function, which basically means that everyone has communications, and that doesn't sort of become a problem.
So what's the process once the interception has taken place? What happens following that?
Well, the legal framework for all of this will be likely to be UNCLOS, which is the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. And under that, under international law, the UK has the right to board any tanker that it might consider or might think is stateless. So basically, it's boarding the tanker to check out the flag and make sure that it's not stateless. So that's kind of the legal framework for the way this is occurring. Getting the commandos onto this tanker, it's a huge tanker, which the good news on that is it means there are a number of areas where you can bring a helicopter into a hover over the ship and then put ropes out the back, and then the commandos will rope down onto the vessel and then start doing the security measures onto the vessel. So basically they'll do a complete security check of the entire vessel leading up to the bridge, and then they'll obviously they'll apprehend it and take it to what's called anchorage. Anchorage is a name in these operations where they will take it to a UK anchorage and basically make sure that it's taken outside of the shadow tanker fleet, of which there are about 7,000 of these. So it's a small dent in a very big operation by the Russians.
And Mikey, we have had a lot of talk in the news recently about concerns over UK defence funding. If these sorts of operations have to happen more often in the future, is there the resource available for it?
Look, I think this is a classic example, actually, of the balance between having high-tech, complex, and low-produced capability. So you're talking about procurement of helicopters, you're talking about procurement of frigates, minesweepers. That's sort of the high-tech conventional stuff that we've known about. But you know, Iran has showed us, in terms of what the threat is, specifically when it comes to Russia. You've also got to look at the one-way drone threat, one-way attack drone threat that comes from Russia, which needs a completely opposite capability. So that needs counter UAS systems, so counter uncrewed air systems that can take out potentially 6,500 one-way attack drones that are coming from Russia in 1 month. That's the amount that Russia are putting on Ukraine, for example, at the moment. So it's this fine balance in defence procurement of what we call the threat versus a threat. And it's deciding what is the threat. So the threat could be one-way attack drones coming from Ukraine. A threat is building a capability which is more holistic, that can take on conventional threats and conduct these maritime security operations that we've just seen overnight here, whilst at the same time being able to defend from Shahed 136 or Gerin 2 one-way attack drones, of which there are vast amounts.
Mikey, thanks for your insight on that. That's Mikey Kay, military analyst and co-host of The Security Brief.